Hello everyone. This happened back in the 1990s when I was just about 6 or 8 years old. Around that time, my father was doing his military service and I only got to see him every other month, just for a few days. One day, he informed us that he would be back for the weekend. Not only that, he was going to bring home a rhino beetle, which he caught while stationed in an outpost. I'm not sure why I remember this, but it was a big deal for me back then. I was very excited, needless to say. Back then, we lived in an apartment complex that had a security post at each entrance. On the day of his arrival, I dropped off a house key to the security guard and went to school. This was a common practice whenever my dad came back, as we only had 2 keys. And we weren't always sure at what time he would be coming back. When school ended, I rushed to my house to check if my father was home. At the entrance, I briefly talked to a security guard who informed me that my dad had just picked up the key not too long ago. I quickly hopped onto the elevator and walked to my unit. The door was unlocked as expected, so I called out for my dad as I entered. Oddly, there was no response. A bit confused, I decided to check if he went to my grandparents' unit, who lived just a couple of floors above us. However, when they answered the door, my grandmother told me she hasn't seen my dad yet. Then I went to the roof terrace, which was his favorite smoking spot, but he wasn't there either. I was getting frustrated by this point and decided to go look for him outside. Luckily, when I reached the ground floor, I saw my father talking to the security guard. I still remember vividly what the security guard asked me when he saw me approaching. "This person is claiming to be your dad. Do you know who this is?" Confused, I replied, "He's my dad." Then I saw the color drain from his face. He told us a man in an army uniform just like my dad's asked for my house key, and he left a few minutes ago. After some confusion, it finally hit me. Someone pretended to be my father and entered our house. Someone was in there when I opened the door. The locksmith and police were immediately contacted. Once the lock was picked, they did a sweep of the house but found nothing. No sign of anyone, and nothing was missing except for a large kitchen knife which was found inside a laundry room. I don't think the police were interested in investigating further, as no items were stolen and no one was injured. We never heard anything more from them. I spent the next few weeks sleeping at my grandparents' house, as I was scared shitless. I wonder what would have happened to me that day if I decided to look for my dad in our house. To the creepy guy who pretended to be my father that day, let's not meet. When I was a sophomore in high school, I got on the train with 2 of my male friends. A man approached me who was of my ethnicity and asked me if I was that ethnicity, and I said yes. It's super typical of people of my ethnicity to immediately strike up conversations with other people of that ethnicity because they just get excited to find someone else like them in the city. He looked like he was in his early 40s. He asks questions that I normally get from extended family. How many siblings do you have? Where did your parents grow up in the home country? How old are you? He also asked for my name. Once there was a lull in our conversation, I moved closer to my friends and had my back turned to the stranger. My friends asked me if he was my uncle, and I let them know that I didn't know the guy. Then the stranger called me back. This time, he told me that he remembered seeing me exactly a year ago on the bus on my way home. He recited the street that I got off on, and this is when I started to see the red flags. I'm sure that it seems ridiculous that I was answering all of his personal questions, but any time I had ever seen anyone of my ethnicity, my parents had treated those people as family. My parents had also conditioned me to be extremely polite, and so in that moment, shutting down his conversation did not seem like an option. He got off at the same stop I got off at, and insisted that we grab a coffee before I head to my classes, and I kept letting him know that I couldn't and that I had a test that I needed to study for. I felt like I needed to provide an excuse. He followed me and my friends, who were walking in front of us, and then just stopped me and asked for my number. I, being an idiot, and thinking I had to give him my number because it was the polite thing to do, gave him my number. The only other option that came into my head was telling him that I didn't have a phone, but my phone was right there in my hand. I'm not quick on my feet. It never seemed like an option to just say no, especially because he knew what street I lived on. I just thought that if I gave him a fake number, he'd be able to find me and confront me. A minute later, I got my first call from him, which I did not answer. Throughout that day, I received 8 calls from him, 7 voicemails, each getting more aggressive with him claiming I promised to get coffee with him, and 5 texts. 4 days later, he was still trying to get in contact, and I finally texted him that I would contact the police if he kept contacting me. He never contacted me again. I spent the next year terrified that I'd run into him again. So, stranger from the C train, let's not meet again. Okay, so this just happened. I'm still trying to figure out what I think. And I'm surprised to even be posting here, also on my mobile. Some background. I'm a middle-aged, overweight woman living in a small town in the Midwest. I've been walking almost every day for a year, and I've lost a lot of weight. But I have a long way to go still. Winters are challenging when you walk outside. Today was a great day for a walk. Roads are clear. It's cold, but not frostbite cold. I don't have much planned for today, so I decided to go for a longer walk. After a full year, my walks around town are super boring. I figured I'll walk backwoods out in the country for a change of pace. I'm a full 2 miles outside of town, surrounded by empty fields when this happens. An old beater truck passes me, going in the same direction as me. He slows down a little, unusual, but people do slow down when they pass someone walking, so whatever. He gets maybe a few 100 yards away when he slows down even more. I stop walking and watch. Then brake lights come on. What the fuck? I start looking around uneasily, trying to come up with a plan if he heads my way. Sure as shit, after a few seconds, his backup lights come on. I completely skeeved out at this point. Luckily, I had just passed a farmhouse. It's literally the only house in sight. I don't know the owners, but it's a well-maintained property and doesn't creep me out at all. I turn around and head towards the house. The backup lights go off. I stop and watch the truck. I really don't want to walk up to a stranger's house. He throws it back in reverse and starts backing towards me. Hell no. I turn around and walk up the driveway. Luckily, an older woman was working outside, and she comes to find out what I'm doing there. I tell her as we watch the truck. After a few minutes, he finally drives off. I watch until he is completely out of sight, and continue my walk back home, with my phone out, ready to jump in a ditch and call 911 if I see him again. I keep trying to come up with an innocent explanation for what happened, but for the life of me, I can't find one. So, creepy dude in the truck, Let's make a deal. I won't walk country roads anymore, so let's not meet.